if you're in a situation where you're actually spending less than you're bringing in, that could give you an indication that maybe you could actually retire on less than what you have coming in each month. And if you're in a bad situation, I would say, where you're spending more than you have coming in, if you're adding to credit card debt, lines of credit, then I think you really need to tackle that first before any retirement occurs to figure out why is that happening, why are you going into debt, and try to reverse that as quickly as possible, because that can really be detrimental to anyone's financial plan and anyone's retirement in general.
Are you ready for a successful retirement? We're addressing the topics facing today's retirees. Welcome to Retire with Ryan. Now here's your host, Ryan Morrissey.
Welcome back. I'm excited about this week's episode. This is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, as that it's a key component to everyone's retirement plan, everyone's retirement planning, and that is your cash flow. And figuring out how much cash flow you need in retirement is absolutely crucial to determining when you can retire, and also making sure that you're retiring at the right point, not retiring too early and not even retiring too late. There's a myth out there, or a rule of thumb, that I run into quite often, and that is that you're only going to need 80% of what you're spending pre-retirement if you have a mortgage. And I've also heard that you'll only need 60% of what you're spending pre-retirement if you don't have a mortgage. So let's talk about that a little bit. My first question when someone brings this up is 80% or 60% of what number? Are we talking your gross income, that is what you make before any taxes or deductions come out of that number, or are we talking your net number? And because of really not knowing what that number is, I usually advocate one of two approaches for people trying to figure out how much am I spending now and how much will I be spending in retirement. And the first option is just looking at what you're taking home in your paycheck, looking at what you're getting every month into your bank account or direct deposit, wherever you have your paychecks going. So that's one way that you can look to see what it is that you have coming in, and then look to see at the end of the month what's left over, right? Is your bank account staying the same? Is it going up? Is it going down? Are you going into debt? And looking at those different scenarios that could be happening will give you an idea of what you're spending. Like most of us, whatever we have coming in by the end of the month or by the next pay period, usually that money is gone, right? We've built our lifestyle around that income, and we know that if that income comes in, we have certain bills that we have to pay, certain household expenses, certain things that we like to do, and we build our lifestyle around that. Whereas if you're in a situation where you're actually spending less than you're bringing in, that could give you an indication that maybe you could actually retire on less than what you have coming in each month. And if you're in a bad situation, I would say, where you're spending more than you have coming in, if you're adding to credit card debt, lines of credit, then I think you really need to tackle that first before any retirement occurs to figure out why is that happening, why are you going into debt, and try to reverse that as quickly as possible, because that can really be detrimental to anyone's financial plan and anyone's retirement in general. So that would be the quick and easy way to figure out a rough estimate of what you're going to need in retirement. I think a better option from there, it does take a little bit more work, would be to complete some type of a cash flow worksheet or a budget worksheet. And I'll put a link to the one that I provide to clients and prospective clients in the show notes. And it's an Excel document that I've created. And in that document, it breaks expenses down into different categories. You have the expenses that you would pay for any debts that you currently have, mortgage, car loans, student loans. Then next it goes into breaking down your household expenses or your fixed expenses. Then looking at your household expenses that are variable, things like home heating oil or electricity, natural gas, sometimes your food bill. You know that you have a certain amount per month, but these amounts vary. And next then looking at really your fun expenses, your wants in retirement. How much are you going to budget for travel, entertainment, different hobbies that you pursue, right? Maybe donations to your children, to your charities. So it's a good idea to get a handle on all those expenses. And then once you've done that, depending on when you retire, you have to factor in any increases that could potentially occur. A lot of people have the idea that when you're in retirement, you're going to spend less money, but we forget that essentially when you retire, every day is Saturday, right? Every day is a weekend because now you're not tied to going to work from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So now you have all this additional time, which usually we want to fill up with doing different activities and things. So you probably want to build some type of a fluff number in there or an additional line item to give yourself some wiggle room that you're not going to be cutting things so close once you've figured out that number. Another thing is health insurance costs. And if you're retiring before 65, and why am I referencing 65? Because 65 is the magic age that everyone is eligible for Medicare. And for most people, by going on Medicare, you're going to significantly cut your health-related costs as compared to retiring before 65 in your early 60s and going out and securing your own health insurance. So I would recommend, if you haven't listened to my episode on getting health insurance before 65, I would go back and listen to that. But that's an additional adjustment that you have to make to either add additional costs into your budget as well. If you're going to have to get your own health insurance plan, if you're retiring at 60, how much is that going to cost you? And there might be some ways to lower those costs through potentially the Affordable Care Subsidy, but you need to factor that into your budget. And then any additional things that you're going to be doing during your retirement. Maybe you love to travel or you love to pursue various hobbies, but you just really never had the time because you were too busy working. So you want to factor that in as well. You also should think about any upcoming expenses, large expenses that you might have either for home repairs, if you know that you have a roof that needs to be replaced, or certain mechanicals like your heating system needs to be replaced, or you need a new driveway, or you need a lot of trees taken down in your yard. You want to build these into your budget, either as lump sum items that need to be taken out when they occur, or build a certain monthly amount. And also any other expenses, even outside of those large expenses that might be coming up, such as maybe if there's still college tuition being paid or there's a wedding on the horizon, you want to factor these in as well so these aren't a surprise to you and they don't derail your retirement. So once you've come up with that number, now you can look to see what options you have available to you as far as generating that income. And pretty much everybody has 3 different levers they can pull, 3 different legs of the retirement stool that maybe you've heard of, and that is Social Security you could be eligible for. If you have a pension that you're eligible for, then that's another income source that you have. And then also if you have investments, hopefully you've been saving up through your retirement plan, through an IRA, through different investment accounts that you have. Those are the 3 main levers that one can pull to turn on income, because when you stop working, what goes away? Well, your paycheck goes away. So you need to figure out how you're going to replace that. If you haven't listened to episode 2, a retirement income strategy that works, then I suggest you go back and do so. And it explores more about these different options available to you in retirement and how to make the most of them. And this also isn't taking into account if you're going to work at all, right? If you're planning to work part-time, or you're maybe just planning to do some consulting, then you could factor that in as well. But I'm really talking about you're quitting cold turkey, the working gig, so to speak, right? You're walking away from working and you're just figuring out, once that paycheck stops, how can you replace that paycheck? So those 3 different avenues you have available to you, you'd want to see how much you could get from Social Security, see how much you could get from a pension if you have one eligible, or figure out how much of your retirement savings and investing you could withdraw. And once you've looked at that, you want to see then if that potential income is enough to cover your retirement needs. And if it's really close to covering those needs, then maybe you want to think about working a little bit longer, because that usually helps a lot of people to improve their financial situation. By working longer, you're increasing what you're putting into your retirement accounts, you're delaying potentially collecting Social Security. If you still have a pension, that's also potentially also growing as well. So that's just something to think about that can help put you in a better position going into retirement and help improve your cash flow, because at the end of the day, cash flow is really the most important thing. There are other options for you available to create additional cash flow in retirement, and I'm hoping to tackle that in some additional episodes. But for many people, once you do retire, there aren't ways to increase your cash flow and gather more assets that you could then use in retirement. So it's really crucial that you get as accurate as you can with your cash flow so that you don't find out down the road that, yeah, I really probably shouldn't have retired because I underestimated my expenses, and man, I wish I had really worked longer. It gets very, very difficult later in life to get back into the workforce, to get a similar paying job. So make sure you've done some of the homework before you make the jump into retirement and that you're as prepared as possible. So your action steps from this episode would be to download my budget worksheet that can be found on the episode notes of this episode by going to retirewithryan.com. Put together what your budget worksheet is, and then listen to a retirement income strategy that works and follow the instructions there as far as gathering the information necessary to look at your income sources available and figure out if there's a shortfall or if you're going to be okay if you retire, to figure out where you stand. As a reminder, my retirement readiness workshops are still going on right now. They're being taught online instead of in person. I have one class that still has some availability that begins on March 23rd. You can go to my website, retirewithryan.com, and click on Retirement Workshops, and you can sign up right there. If you have any additional topics or things that you'd like me to cover, you can also put those requests in through the contact form on my website, retirewithryan.com. Have a great week. Talk to you next Wednesday.
You should consult a financial advisor familiar with your specific circumstances before you make any financial decisions. Nothing in this broadcast constitutes a solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities. Any mention of rates of return are historical or hypothetical in nature and are not a guarantee of future returns. Ryan Morrissey, CFP, is an investment advisor representative of Morrissey Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor.